Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Al's Joint. I'll be joined by my co-host Dennis Painter as we revisit the Epstein/Trump fiasco that's kind of turned this country on its head. So as we pay homage to one of the greatest artists of all time, Sam Cooke, and It's a Wonderful World, let's take the gloves off and let's get at it. Hello, Brother Painter. Welcome back for another episode. We're right back in the middle of this madness. We want to take time today to refresh folks on how all this deflection started. It all started with Jeffrey Epstein and Trump's involvement. And actually, we don't even want to call it Epstein's Island. Let's just call it the Epstein/Trump Island or the Epstein/Trump files. So how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good today. I just got back from visiting my brother down in Kentucky and having some good time with him. So I'm doing pretty good. I took a break away from the news, but I'm ready to dive into it.
Yeah, so I want to make sure, folks, we've been getting sidetracked for so long, and it's worked, but we got to take folks back to the roots and let people understand that all this was a result of Donald Trump being mentioned thousands of times in the Epstein file, and at least 100 times in the Zasha Riley tapes. So, and then the bombshell report came out, or a book coming out through the New York Times, what happened inside the White House during the early days of the Epstein files being released, or the story hitting the front pages.
Yeah, and what I want to say is sometimes seems like justice moves slow. Sometimes it seems like there's no justice. And sometimes it seems like we're always searching for justice, but it feels like there's a little bit of reaction now that's positive, moving towards some type of getting the truth out to the public. If you don't mind, I'd like to compliment the host from Meet the Press that had the interview with Trump, and she held him accountable. Christine Welter. She held him accountable, and he started crying and got up and walked out of the interview. So I want to compliment that journalist for doing that.
Those people walking around, they're looking always in the same. They weren't in. They were being ushered into the building.
There's no evidence.
You had a bunch of dirty cops, and frankly, what they did was weaponization of our government.
But sir, there's no evidence of that. More than 1,000 people.
No, there's none. You know what you do? Try looking at the tapes one time.
Would you take it off the table?
Look at the tapes one time.
But 172 people did plead guilty to assaulting police officers.
You know why they pled guilty?
Should they be exempt?
Because they told they were going to jail for 15 years if they didn't.
Should they?
They pled guilty because they were frightened. They went down. They were ushered into a building. Many of them were arrested without even going into the building.
You'd be okay with them receiving taxpayer dollars?
The people were destroyed by dirty cops and by weaponization. Many of those people should be compensated. Now, with that being said, as I understand it, the weaponization fund was going to set up a group of people, people that could be picked by anybody, fair people, smart people, and they will go on an individual case basis.
Okay.
Now, I don't know what's going to happen with the weaponization fund. I love the idea because people like you, the fake, dirty press, the crooked press, people like stupid Biden, he's not smart enough to know what's going on, but people that surrounded him, surrounded his beautiful, resolute desk in the Oval Office, what they did to the lives of people, they destroyed people. They sent people to jail who did nothing wrong.
All right, just to be very clear, there's no evidence of what you're saying, but let
There's
me
a lot
ask you
of
about
evidence.
Todd Blanche. Let me ask you about Todd Blanche.
Listen to me.
Let's talk
There's
about Todd
tremendous
Blanche.
evidence. There's nothing
Well,
but evidence.
The
election was rigged. It was a dirty election.
Mr.
And it's
President,
happening again right now in California.
You've never presented evidence.
It's happening
the
right now in California.
Rigged.
Right now, it's look at what's
Where's
happening in
the evidence
California.
to that?
It's
The
4
Republicans
days.
are doing well in
California. It's no, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days, and they aren't even close to coming up with.
That's how they count
You know
the
why they're
votes in
doing that?
California.
Because they're cheating on the election.
What? Do you have evidence to support
all I
that?
have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not
and
evidence.
And I listen to people, and let's see what happens.
But sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they
that
count the votes in
Do you
California.
think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a
State
winner?
and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging
They're
the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote
They're
in
crooked,
California.
just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
Really?
Let's
Well, you
continue.
play right into their hands. then.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid.
Let's
you play
continue.
right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But Mr. President,
you know why I
you've
got
never
that?
presented
Because you have no
evidence.
credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd.
You
Blanche.
have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk
Your
about
elections
you
in
went
this
to
country.
court.
We're like a third world country.
But, sir,
your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and
But,
Meet
Mr.
the Press is crooked,
Mr.
and so
President-
is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But, Mr. President-
You're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good
Mr.
time.
President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat
I
in the
traveled
rain with
all
you.
the, I know. I
I've sat in the
traveled
rain
all the
with
way
you
to
for an hour,
Wisconsin.
on and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what?
Mr.
A
President,
country can never be
We
great
traveled
with a dishonest
Listen,
press.
we
Come on,
traveled
let's go.
all the way.
Okay. I want to compliment the New York Times for putting the truth out there. Okay. And keeping the Epstein files alive. So I want to do that. And then at the same time, I think that the Republicans need to see, and this is related to the Epstein stuff, it has not gone away. Now, with all the diversions, Trump's only made himself more unpopular. I don't know whether you follow the Knicks or not. I don't, but the news is he got booed. He jinxed that game and they lost that game, but he was not welcome in New York. And so I take my hat off to those who booed him because they gave him the proper welcome. Tell him get the hell out.
So for the record, I am a LeBron James fan, has been. So whatever team he's been on, I've followed. So right now, as long as he's active, I'm a Lakers fan. However, my second team has always been the Knicks because I was a Patrick Ewing fan, a John Starks fan. It goes on and on. I can name a dozen Knicks players that I loved and I followed from college. So I'm a Knicks fan. I'm rooting for the Knicks. And game 4 of this series, where the Knicks won, it took them the whole game to wash off the stink of Trump coming to game 3 and almost ruining their playoff run. So the worst game they played, or the worst game they played was game 3 when Trump was there. Now they played a horrible first half in game 4, but they came back to one of the most incredible victories I've ever seen in any sporting event. But that neither near nor there. But I want to go back to what you mentioned with Christine Welker, and yes, her questions and the interview was really normal journalism. The fact that we've fallen so low that we got to say, hey, you did with your job, and we got to applaud that is a shame in this country, right?
Yep.
Because that would have been normal anywhere else. You say something, the person who's interviewed can challenge you with facts, and you have a chance at rebuttal, right? You don't get up and cry like a little bitch and walk off the set. It's just a new low for the office of the presidency. Another
Well,
new
no president ever, yeah, no president ever acted like that. And if you watch his interviews, when he reacts to that, of course, everything's every narrative that is not complimenting him is fake or false news, and the people that's in front of him, the journalists, are no good and should have been ashamed of themselves and should be fired. Most of them are women. He has no respect for women whatsoever. I think he's proven that time and again, and that feeds into his entire life. He has no respect for women, and that's but going back to the Epstein Trump sex trafficking, that's evident. But in addition to that, he has no respect for anyone. I mean, he sexually abused Sasha Riley too, and for those that don't know, Sasha Riley was a young boy, and he was sexually abused by Trump. That evidence is out there.
Well, one of the issues that I have with the media is that they allow Donald Trump to insult people, and they don't in turn respond by telling them, look, I've never been accused of being a pedophile. Do you want to answer that question? He's so quick to jump on things. He just attacked the Senate candidate from Maine, and he called him.
That's up in Maine. He's a thug, and they're trying to make excuses for him. I mean, he's worse than any human being that's ever run for office, probably. I've never seen a person like that run for office. Even his business, he's not a businessman at all. His parents supported him. Guy's a loser.
He actually made that statement, and somebody needs to say, because and I'm sorry I don't have his name in front of me. I'll have it before the end of the show, but they're asking this senator, and rightfully so now, about these issues that came out about his personal life, right? They have every right to ask that question. My problem is that they're afraid to ask Trump those questions. There's never been a president in the history of this country that's been accused of being a pedophile, of raping little girls, of raping little boys. If it's not true, then the American people have a right to hear it from him. Not that, oh, Epstein was a bum, and no, you should come out and say, look, we'll release the files, everything with my name in it, because if he's protecting these so-called other billionaires, friend, protect them. But put every page out there unredacted with your name in it. Declare the name, not declare the name of Donald Trump. Declare the name of the president of the United States. The presidency is bigger than Donald Trump. And the fact that the world thinks, or in some cases know, that we elected a pedophile, a child rapist, into that office twice, just demeans and belittles that office. Fuck Trump. I'm not healed when he's gone. The damage that he's done to this country and to the office of the president will linger like a virus.
Yeah, and what's that say? And I want to address this in a way that's positive. What's that say about people's attention to morals, people's attention to real freedom in this country, people's attention to protecting each other, people's attention to protecting underage girls and boys? Where are you? Where's your attention now? How do we elect a person like this twice? And we knew this. I mean, convicted of multiple crimes. Charged with raping women. Making settlements to keep them quiet. Charged with prostitution while his wife was pregnant, or right after she was pregnant. All these sex crimes in his own voice. Talking in derogatory means about women. Okay, and it tells you that the type of person he is, talking in derogatory terms about his own daughter. Okay, his own daughter. What kind of person can ignore those facts? They're facts. They're out there. People want to say, that the media, news media is fake. Where did you learn about Donald Trump? Did you go and sit down with him? No. Everyone or not everyone, but most people know what they know about Donald Trump through the media. You believe what you choose to believe. Now, believing in someone who uh, rapes underage girls and boys says something about you. Supporting someone like that says something about you. You need to find a different path. This country needs to find a different path with someone that has higher morals. Now, I'm not saying that that it has to be a Democrat. I'm not saying it has to be a Republican. I'm saying that this country, our voters need to understand where they are and what they're saying. Everything's a fake media. Trump says they take up the call unless it's complimentary to Trump. Well, how in the hell did they find out about Trump? It's through the media. So they believe the media unless Trump says not to. They're blind. And all this stuff, that article in the New York Times that recently came out, it was so damaging that when it first came up, that they went into the Situation Room with a number of people, including uh, people in his administration and J.D. Vance. They went into the Situation Room to try to figure out how do we put a stop to this getting out? How do we, dampen it down as far as the Epstein story or Epstein files? And a Situation Room is for discussions of war. That's what it's for. That's where they go when they want to have private discussions about planning, either settle war, start a war, or how, what are the operations of the war. That's where they go. So that's what they did related to the Epstein files. It was that serious. They saw it before it was redacted. It's that serious. Okay. They knew. They
Let me
knew that
let
Trump.
me piggyback on what you just said to make sure the Situation Room is one of the few places in the White House, if not if it's not recorded. There's a
Right.
reason for that, right? Because, when you're in there talking about serious issues of national security, it's not recorded. That's why they call it, that's why they gather there. Now, if they decide to let somebody in the film, they do that from time to time because they've reached a decision on what they're going to do. And you get to watch it play out in real time, right? For the American people to see it at a later time. So the fact that they were having those discussions in there, they couldn't do that in the Oval Office. They couldn't do that in the other press rooms because those rooms are
Right.
recorded. So they had to be in a Situation Room because they knew that information was detrimental to Trump's presidency because he was guilty. He's a pedophile. And I want
Right.
to
And
add that Graham Plattner is the senator from Maine that he's attacking because of his private personal life.
well, and if you look at what Trump wanted to do, and it was reported. So, and I'm telling people go do your own research, but it was reported by the New York Times. He wanted to kill every piece of the Epstein files. He didn't want it out at all, none of it. And he got furious when people had suggestions about letting some of it or all of it out. And for different reasons, like J.D. Vance said, we'll just put it out there. We'll get past it. He was furious with J.D. Vance about that because he didn't want that. I mean, the world knows. The world knows he's a pedophile. Okay. MAGA wants to deny it. They know, but they want to deny it. The rest of the world knows he's a pedophile. All right. And they are using the Republican Congress and the Senate know he's a pedophile. And they're using them to delay justice for those women and boys that were molested and trafficked.
Let's ask the viewers to think about this for a minute. Back then, you're talking about a little over a year ago, right? Um, that when this came out, Trump hadn't read the file, right? He knows what's in it, right? It was written about him basically, so he knows what's in it, but he hadn't read the file. So why would you at that particular time be pushing to squash it. You don't know who you were protecting then. You see what I'm saying? If now a year later he can say, "Hey, after all these things I got a chance to read and came out, I got to protect some of my billionaire friends," or he didn't know any of that then. Well, he shouldn't have, right? Because he shouldn't had access to it at that particular time because he had just got into office. But he knew he lived it. He knows that it's in there. He knows that Zasha Riley's references is in there. People are going to ask questions. Why would this little boy say repeatedly, even when he was young, because don't forget, he did police reports out there from Zasha Riley, that you raped him. You weren't even president then. Why would this young boy say before you were president that you raped him? You were just a celebrity rapist, I might say, but a celebrity nonetheless. So people need to think about that. They need to ask those questions to themselves and to their congressmen who are blocking this. Why are these things happening? Why was Trump so adamant about blocking this in the beginning? If he's not in
Well,
there, he's not targeted.
well, everyone knows that if you're not guilty of something, you're going to be transparent, you're going to be cooperative. Trump and the Trump administration has done everything they could to suppress the truth related to the Epstein files, and they have them heavily redacted. We got a little over 3 million documents. They're 70% to 80% redacted. Okay, that's how heavily they're redacted. Todd Blanche claimed that there's another 2.5 million documents in the Epstein files that aren't important. Well, he shouldn't decide because he's been a long-term friend of Donald Trump before he was president. He represented Donald Trump in different court cases. Of course, if you don't break the law, you don't need the attorney. So Trump had Todd Blanche as his attorney because he broke the law. So now here we got this guy holding on to 2.5 million documents that the American public should see. Now, what's happening, and I'm glad, is the noise continues. Now, what you said starting on this podcast was absolutely true. He's done every single thing he can to as a diversion. He bombed boats, fishermen boats, killed innocent people. He's going after the immigrants. He's done everything he can do. Started the war with Iran based off of the whims of Israel. I mean, he's done everything he can do, but the noise is still there. And thank goodness. Now, I want to compliment also New Mexico's representative Melanie Stansbury, who's been speaking out continually and consistently in behalf of release of the entire release of the files and in behalf of getting justice for those people, regardless of gender, who were sexually abused, sexually trafficked by Epstein and Trump. A big kudos out to her. She's doing the right thing. In this day and time, sometimes it's harder to do the right thing than it is just to keep quiet. And she's doing the right thing. Scott Pelley did the right thing. So I'm hoping that people continue to do the right thing. You're doing the right thing. I'm hoping I'm doing the right thing by continuing to speak out against what's a horrific injustice against young girls and young boys.
I agree 100% that those folks who are pushing back, thank goodness, because absent of that, and let's really give a strong kudos and please continue to fight to the victims. The victims hadn't just ran to Washington and said, "We're not letting this go." This cover up would have been, it would have just been us talking heads on the internet talking about something. But the fact that they stood up, even though they knew they were going to be scrutinized and attacked, which they have been, they still stood up there. So really, kudos to those women who went through all this and still in the fight. But I want to go back to and let people understand what's happening here with the cover up. They started with the ICE raids, and then it was Venezuela annexing Canada, invading Greenland, the constant talk of invading Cuba. Then none of that worked. What do? They started a war. They thought it was going to be a distraction. It's become a full-blown albatross around his fucking neck, and rightfully so. He dragged us into a war to cover up the fact that he's a pedophile. And that, as you said, it's not going away, because the one thing that I'm hopeful, and I want to tell American people, I'm proud that the majority of Americans, I'm not talking about that 25 to 30% hardcore cult members that no matter what happens to Trump, they're going to support him. And that's not 25, 30% of the country. That number is lower. But when you talk about registered Republicans, that is 25 to 30% of them, which probably makes up about 15% of the American public. But the fact that those folks are saying we can put up with a lot of stuff, but we're not going to let this go. They turned a blind eye towards January 6th, that we can go on down the list, right? But when it comes to raping little boys and girls, the American people are saying, no, we're not letting this go. You're going to have to explain what happened to those kids. And I want to move over to this Zorro Ranch in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Before we do, can I say something about, I'm kind of piggybacking off something you said?
Yes, yes.
I too compliment those young ladies and boys who are standing up and saying, I was molested, I was sex trafficked. I'm asking those who aren't speaking up, that were mistreated, that were violated, but aren't speaking up. Please speak up. So I didn't want to stop you from going to Zorro Ranch.
Oh no, I'm glad you said that,
speak
because
up.
what I'm going to insert before we go there, I want folks to listen to this. And we played this on an earlier podcast. The Zasha Raleigh reference to Trump raping him.
When Trump assaulted you, so sexual assault and physical assault?
Yes. So
And
at one point, well, I kind of acquiesced to whatever sexual things that he wanted to do. But at some point, he wanted me to have sex with him. So he laid down on his stomach, and there was a wooden tent stake that was in the room, and I had been eyeballing it as a weapon. And what I did was put the condom on the wooden tent stake, put it inside of him, and I kicked it as hard as I could. And that's why he had to get life flighted out, because I ripped him open.
So I just want folks to know, after listening to that, the next time you hear Trump say anything about Graham Plackner, the senator who's running in Maine, remember that we have an obligation in the media. The media has an obligation that not only ask Graham Plackner those questions, which I think are fair, they have an obligation to ask Donald Trump, what the hell is going on here? Why hasn't anybody addressed this man who said as a child, as a 9, 10, 11-year-old boy, he was raped and violated repeatedly and choked out by Donald Trump. I just want folks to understand that. So as we segue over to the Zorro Ranch in Santa Fe, New Mexico, just give folks a little background. This property was owned by Jeffrey Epstein, and he attempted, and here's a picture of it, but he attempted to make this a private town with its own police force and its own judicial system. And based on what he's done other places, I wouldn't have been surprised that would have wouldn't have happened. If you listen again to the Zasha Raleigh tapes and interviews, he says that it's not just Epstein's island; it's the Epstein and the other billionaires' property that they had in these states where they had these thousands of acres, where the only people were there were these sex traffickers and pedophiles.
And the young girls and boys they violated. And related to Zorro Ranch, one of the things that's out there is not only was that the place where Epstein and the pedophiles gathered to abuse underage girls and boys, but it's also a place where it's alleged that they buried some of the young girls that they murdered. So that's the other thing about the Zorro Ranch. Now, to date, they have not found any bodies, but as far as I know, they are searching. That's the other thing about Zorro Ranch. In New Mexico, I talked about their representative, Melanie Stansbury. That's where she's from, is New Mexico, and she's been fighting like hell to get justice for those women, and really to get justice for the American people as well.
And we've asked folks numerous times to listen to the Zasha Raleigh tapes. They've been released for years. He's had interviews done in the past. His story has been hasn't changed a bit. It's been identical. There's no way you're going to put together those stories and things won't change as you tell them. But I want to make sure folks understand. He's saying that at these ranches where these pedophiles, there was Prince Charles. Everybody knows what England done to him. They punished him. We reward our pedophiles, right? Because our pedophiles that are listed in there, Donald Trump, second term as a president, Jim Jordan, congressman from Ohio. Jim Jordan has the nerve to head committees and that are discussing these issues. How do you put the fox in a hen house? Clarence Thomas, a United States Supreme Court justice, is mentioned in a pedophile interview, being at these parties numerous times. Lindsey Graham, who's up for re-election again. Some of these states don't care if their senators are pedophiles. They don't care. They just want to, it's tribalism. They just want to win. They don't care if it's a pedophile or rapist. They don't care. But these folks are mentioned throughout not only the Epstein files, but the stories told even more specifically in the Zasha Raleigh tapes.
Well, two things related to that. Jim Jordan from Ohio, he was attached to a previous cover-up of sexual abuse at the University of Ohio. And of course, he was claiming, I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything, I didn't speak anything, and he just helped cover it up. Then you got the Zasha Raleigh tape saying he was an abuser of boys. He liked boys, and then you put him in charge of a committee to oversee, the Epstein files and an investigation. The outcome. He's going to cover his ass. Okay, he's going to make sure he's protected because his name is in there, and they're going to keep maneuvering until they hope it goes away. And thank goodness it hasn't. Part of what's going on is we got New Mexico issuing subpoenas to get to the bottom of the Epstein debacle. Okay, and the states have different tools, and we should be encouraging them to use those tools. Now, part of what's being subpoenaed is directly related to access to information to the Zorro Ranch. The other part is related to, and subpoenas are related to finances. And they've one of the banks that they're subpoenaing is J.P. Morgan Chase. So they're broadening out the investigation. Now, as I said before, New Mexico's Representative Melanie Stansbury has been standing up and has been fighting for the victims from the very beginning. I applaud New Mexico and their efforts, and I hope that other states will join them because, Congress and the Senate are not going to get to the end of it. With Jim Jordan in place, it's going to be delay. The Senate is going to do the same thing. Delay. It wasn't until there was so much pressure from the public that Congress and the Senate voted to release the Epstein files, which was being held up by the Republicans. And it was only after that pressure did and vote by both the House and the Senate did Trump sign it. Then it was plan B. How do we continue to cover it up? And it goes back to where the meeting they were having in the Situation Room is, how do we handle this? There is a plan A, it failed. There's a plan B, and there's going to be a plan C. As long as we keep putting that stuff out there, they're going to have to keep getting shovels out to try to cover it up. And there ain't going to be that many shovels. So we just need to keep moving.
Well, I want to tell the MAGA cult faithful that hang on in there with your pedophile and rapists. Hang in there. Wear shirts. You don't care. You know what the truth is. Every time I see one of these cases that break out in the country, all of a sudden they have clarity. They know that person should be convicted. But when you bring up the obvious, that all the evidence is here, all of a sudden their judgment gets clouded, and they circle the wagons around their pedophiles and their rapists. So I don't know. I'm hoping. I'm constantly at odds with you over the hope, because you're hopeful they stick. I'm hoping that folks say, okay, enough's enough. We're not just going to agree, understand. We're going to push back. We're going to make sure that our whoever our candidates are, promise you have to get in office and make sure that we make sure this never happens again. It's not good enough to say, let's just recalibrate and bring this thing back to no, you have to do more than that. You have to make sure that this never happens again. So there has to be checks and balances that are strengthened and put in place, and every single person who was a part of this cover up or who was violating the Constitution or the law needs to be held accountable. And whether it's I don't care if they've been kicked out of their position, whether it's beyond they need to go and figure out who was the Attorney General in Florida.
Todd Blanche?
Not Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche was what his personal attorney, right?
He took over
Acosta. Alexander Acosta is the one who gave him the sweetheart deal. That needs to be investigated, right? Yeah, you don't get to slide back into retirement and spend taxpayers' money after you committed felonies and had literally hundreds and hundreds, some people even say thousands of young girls who were raped and sex trafficked, and the little boys and little girls who were violated by these pedophiles. You don't get to say, okay, that's in the past. If you're a candidate and that's not part of your platform, you're not getting my support. Not one bit. If anything, I'm gonna push against you.
Right. I think if we had the people to go and ask each individual that has children how they felt about a pedophile living in their neighborhood, okay, how they feel about grown adults raping underage children, and people need to stop and say, am I for or against the rape of underage girls and boys? Simply put, if you're not in favor of it, then do something. And I agree with you. Every single person, I don't care top to bottom, Todd Blanche he's involved in the cover up. Whoever was in that Situation Room, including J.D. Vance, who participated in it, all of those people should be held accountable, because what they're doing is blocking justice. Okay. They're complicit in it.
Well, folks, we've reached the end of another episode. I want to thank everybody for joining. Please don't forget to hit the share, like, and subscribe button below. And please leave your comments because we're interested in what you're thinking. Unless you're a far right-wing MAGA nut. Hell, even if you're just a MAGA nut, we don't give a damn what you're thinking. So until next week, let's stay in the struggle. Peace.
This segment of Al's Joint is brought to you by JPAC Trucking.